Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Anthony Moreno. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened new tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. Joining us now to discuss how these threats may impact trade and economic development at the border is Jerry Pacheco, president of the Border Industrial Association. Mr. Pacheco also serves as executive director of the International Business Accelerator, and he writes the column Business Across the Border for the Albuquerque Journal. And Jerry, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on an anniversary of writing that column for the Albuquerque Journal. You're celebrating 30 years?
My goodness, I hate when you say that, but I started in December of 1994.
Well, we enjoy the column, and thank you so much for sharing that with us as well. And I want to talk about an issue that you've been writing about, and that is these tariff threats that we've heard from Donald Trump. Can you share with me what was your initial reaction when you heard about these tariff threats?
Well, I thought about what a disruption the tariffs would be to the supply chains that we have. And we went through that through the pandemic and after the pandemic, and I thought, wow, coming out of the gate and punching your two closest trade allies in the nose with the threatening tariffs on them, I thought that's not good. I mean, that's not a way to foment a North American trade bloc, which the USMCA and NAFTA previously were aimed at doing.
That trade agreement is up for review in 2026. Do you feel that this is a negotiation tactic dealing with the trade agreement coming up for review?
Yeah, I was initially shocked when he announced the tariffs, but then I took a deep breath and I stepped back and I thought to myself, when I saw that Justin Trudeau of Canada, the Prime Minister, went to Mar-a-Lago and visited with President-elect Trump and said it was a great conversation, then about a week later, President-elect Trump talked to Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, and she said there will be no tariff war. I thought to myself, well, something's going on behind the scenes here, and I think it's a method that he uses to kind of soften the negotiators from Canada and Mexico going into 2026. The tariffs are a way to kind of set them back a bit.
Now let's talk about these potential tariffs. We do know that at the time we're talking, the president said he would impose a 25% tariff on goods imported from Mexico and Canada until those countries satisfactorily stop illegal immigration and the flow of illegal drugs into the U.S. This is what he said not long after he was reelected. So can you just kind of share with us how could that possibly impact what's happening in Santa Teresa at the U.S.-Mexico border?
Well, it would impact us greatly. First of all, we trade $800 billion, almost $800 billion a year with Mexico, about $774 billion with Canada. You put a 25% tariff on that volume of trade, it's a lot. And we, the taxpayers, the Americans, are going to be faced with a tariff, which is a tax on us. But from my point of view, what worried me most about these tariffs, it makes our region less attractive for new investment to come in that's going to try to take advantage of the USMCA. It might make companies that have operations that exist already in Santa Teresa not want to expand. Stability is what's needed for a company to invest $100 million in a production plant. You don't want to roll the dice if there's this kind of talk about tariffs and making our region less competitive. So it could affect us in our ability to recruit companies.
Some economic analysts have also said that this is sort of a tax on companies that are just going to pass it down onto the American people. Is that correct?
Most definitely. I mean, if the tariffs are enacted, and again, it's who knows, get prepared to pay a premium for your guacamole because the avocados coming from Mexico will be tariffed at 25%. Mexico is making about 17% of the vehicles that we drive in the United States. Those will become 25% more expensive for us. And it has the potential, the tariffs have the potential of unraveling the USMCA. And I'm still struggling as to how the president could do that, because the USMCA was a treaty that was approved by Congress. Okay, it's federal law. And I think he would do that based on, let's say, a threat to the United States being immigration or drugs or what have you, to get around the treaty.
Now, there is a lot of rhetoric going around with these tariff threats. So I'd kind of like to hear from you. When you hear threats like this, what do you really think that folks should focus on to avoid the noise that might be circling around what's really going on?
It's very hard to avoid the noise, but we just have to wait to see what's going to pass in January. President-elect Trump, in his first term, actually imposed tariffs on Mexico's steel imports, and when they said they would restrict that, he took them away. He threatened tariffs on Mexico his first term if Mexico wouldn't get a handle on northbound migration into the United States. Then President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said, okay, we'll work a little harder on that. And the tariffs were never imposed. So it's 50-50. It's not a for sure thing that they're going to be imposed.
Mexico has been the U.S.'s largest, established itself as the U.S.'s largest trading partner. So what sort of retaliation could Mexico implement if Trump decides to go through with these tariffs, and they do go through?
Same type of tariffs on our goods going to Mexico. And taking it from New Mexico's standpoint, we're breaking records in terms of exports to Mexico. And if the tariffs come to pass, we could see our exports shrink. That means less jobs, less foreign investment, less outside investment in New Mexico, particularly in the border region.
Now, you said this is a record-breaking exporting year for New Mexico. Can you dive into that a little bit more and share a little bit more?
Yeah, we through the International Business Accelerator track New Mexico's exports to the world. We can do that at a state level, and we can do that by county level. We have 2 months yet to report in 2024, and we're already breaking records. Our total imports are going to surpass $9 billion in 2024, and our exports to Mexico will have doubled. I'm looking at the figures, and it looks like Doña Ana County, which now accounts for 63% of the state's exports to the world because of Mexico, are going to go to 69%.
Wow. That's really impressive. And what do you think attributes to that sort of growth?
Every time we recruit a big production plant or distributor into Santa Teresa that trades with Mexico, our exports go up. So I'll give you an example. Admiral Cable is a Taiwanese company we recruited. They recently started operations. They're shipping cable already to Mexico. So 2025, I predict we'll even see higher exports because we're going to have new companies come online next year.
As we talked about earlier, the USMCA is up for review. What opportunities do you see with that right now that could help Santa Teresa?
Well, agreements are not stayed. They need to be tweaked every once in a while. And it'll be 6 years in 2026 that, the agreement was put together and what have you. It's working very well for us at this point in time because we do have an automotive component in Santa Teresa, and the USMCA has a big automotive component there. I don't see too many major changes that would need to be looked at in the USMCA other than reviewing, let's say, a tweak here, a tweak there. Maybe some of the content in the automotive industry that some of the U.S. and North American firms are having trouble meet, that may be looked at a little bit.
You mentioned the automotive industry. How big is that industry and what's going on in Santa Teresa?
From a national standpoint, it's huge because Mexico and the United States and Canada are symbiotic. A lot of people don't know that a lot of the glass in our windshields come from Canada, but a lot of the assembly of the motors, the components come from Mexico. It's huge for us. We have FXI in our industrial base. Touch your headliner in your car. That soft stuff is what they make. We have Vitesco, which is a German company doing auto sensors. DA Inc. is a Japanese company that does plastic injection for the automotive industry, on and on and on. So it would really affect us if the USMCA got impinged by 25% tariffs, because we do have that automotive component. And an even bigger component is the electronics industry in Santa Teresa and San Jeronimo, our counterpart on the other side of the border. So those are our two biggest sectors that would be impacted.
Now, what about Canada? You mentioned them. I mean, how could they possibly retaliate if these tariffs did go through?
I don't see why Canada or Mexico wouldn't retaliate with the same type of tariffs on U.S. goods going in there. I don't see either country sitting back and taking a 25% hit without retaliating. That happens with the China and the U.S.-China trade war, and I expect that to happen in North America if these tariffs are imposed.
When you hear rhetoric like that and businesses hear rhetoric like that, does that slow things down and make them think twice when it comes to possible expansion or investments? 100%.
I'm dealing with a company that is in the automotive industry that is waiting to see what's going to happen, and they're spooked because of the tariffs. Again, they're interested in coming to our region, but when you're investing millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in a production plant, you have to cover all bases and do your due diligence. And when something like that's thrown out there, it makes you stand in place, and it makes you want to postpone any major investment decisions.
Now, also when we look at how this may impact consumers, when we hear these talks of tariff threats, what should consumers have in mind?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I was behind a family in the Family Dollar store, and they had a basket full of groceries. They had some toys, they had mops and what have you, and they were using that store to shop like you and I go to Albertsons or whatever. And I looked at them and I thought to myself, 25% more for me to buy a mop is not really going to kill me, okay? But these families, that family that I saw is stretching their budget, their paycheck, and 25% to them does mean quite a bit. And we do have a lot of New Mexicans that are economically challenged that will be directly affected by tariffs.
Now, some people may say that this is also a move that could help bring more manufacturing to the U.S. and more production in the United States. What are your thoughts on that when you hear that?
That's not an automatic, and it's not a black and white issue, because to move a production plant, let's say from Mexico or China or wherever, it's brain surgery. It's so difficult to do that because you already have your established supply chains and your skilled workforce where you exist. To kind of pick up and move, it doesn't happen overnight. And the U.S., if we keep doing this and creating an air of instability of tariff here, tariff there, to try to move companies, I mean, are you going to feel stable coming into this environment? I mean, stability is the key word in terms of foreign direct investment.
Now, with this rhetoric that's involved with the tariff threats was the flow of illegal migration to the U.S., immigration to the U.S., how big of an issue is that, and what an economic development at the border with what you're doing? Does that affect with anything that you're doing there?
It has not now. I mean, the flows of migrants coming north has slowed to a trickle compared to what it was with the height of the migration crisis. Going through the industrial parks during the migration crisis, I would see apprehensions every once in a while. I do about 2 tours to investors or potential prospects every week, and I have not seen a migrant. I haven't seen the Border Patrol apprehend anybody in the last few months.
If the federal government or even the state of New Mexico were to implement any additional checks at the port of entry in Santa Teresa, how does that impact economic development there?
It would serve to function as when Governor Abbott in Texas did his DPS secondary inspections north of the ports of entry. First of all, I don't think New Mexico would do that. The port of entry is a federal port. General Services Administration owns the port of entry. So New Mexico does have a state port of entry, and trucks going through that state port of entry, which is directly north of the international port, the state can conduct safety inspections, which it has the right to do. You know, your taillight's out or you're leaking oil or something like that. But I don't see the state of New Mexico doing that. We've always been a very pro-trade state and very pro-trade with Mexico State.
How have your conversations been with federal lawmakers on this issue, and any concern that you've been able to bring to them? How have they responded?
Well, the main concern I brought with our congressional delegation, with our two senatorial offices and our representative, is we have a lot of momentum to expand and modernize the Santa Teresa Port of Entry. GSA just did a feasibility study that is recommending the expansion of the Port of Entry. We have 4 northbound commercial lanes. They're recommending 14. We have we have 3 northbound commercial lanes, are recommending 14. We have 4 passenger lanes. They're recommending 12 and a couple of new lanes into Mexico. All this momentum's going on, and we need to get on a priority list for the second stage of funding for environmental and design. I'm asking the congressional delegation, hey, well, with the change in administration, is that going to affect our momentum in getting the port expanded? And we'll have to wait and see, because nobody has a crystal ball.
If that port is expanded, how do you see that impacting the mission of your organization and growing the industrial base there?
A more modern port will attract more traffic. More traffic through the port of entry attracts more investment. You get more distribution centers, you get more production plants. This next year, the Bridge of the Americas, which is one of the 2 major bridges in El Paso, is going to be shut down for renovation until 2029. They predict that the construction is going to last. There is a contingency in El Paso that's vying or lobbying to keep commercial traffic off of that port of entry. That's an ideal opportunity for Santa Teresa to capture some of that traffic. But we need a more modern, larger port of entry.
With that more modern, larger port of entry, how do you see it also updating the technological needs that are in Santa Teresa?
Well, Santa Teresa as a port, when it was opened in 1993, was founded as the port of entry to test new technologies. We've always had that kind of moniker. About a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, Santa Teresa implemented a new technology called non-invasive inspection technology, NII. This is a faster technology to look into cargo, and a truck literally just passes by these sensors, and a person off-site can see if there's any contraband or whatever in the truck. And we can do almost 100% of inspections on cargo, whereas the average rate across the board amongst all ports of entry is less than 20% inspections on cargo trucks. So it's really going to help us prevent contraband and speed up cross-border shipments.
Every administration has their own border policy that they want to try to implement. How does border policy at the federal level impact what you're doing in Santa Teresa and the border communities surrounding it?
It has a total effect on us. Again, our port's owned by the federal government, so whether they choose to expand it or not affects New Mexico's ability to attract good-paying jobs and investment. And I've had discussions with the congressional delegation. I think with the incoming administration, with the President-elect Trump's effort to stop contraband coming to the United States, particularly drugs and undocumented entries, ports of entries most of that contraband comes in. People think that there's somebody throwing a bag over the fence and somebody picks it up. That happens. But most of the drugs are coming in vehicles northbound. So if you modernize a port of entry and you put state-of-the-art technology there, you're better in a position to intercept that. So I hope the Trump administration will invest in border infrastructure in that sense.
New Mexico's legislative session is a 60-day legislative session. Can you share with us a little bit about some goals that your organization has in meeting with state lawmakers to talk about the needs that exist in Santa Teresa to further increase economic development at the border?
Our motto has always been you got to keep infrastructure ahead of development. The day you can't flush your toilets is the day you don't recruit companies. So our major objective this session is to acquire funding to expand our wastewater treatment system. We have some pretty large projects that are going to come online this next year, and we need to keep ahead of that development. We've been very successful through this administration, through the legislature up in Santa Fe, of getting road monies. We have more than $22.5 million being invested in the Santa Teresa Jetport. The runways are being widened to 150 feet and reinforced. When that's done in January, we can land 767 jets. We have a brand new 4-lane highway that's going to be built off of the Santa Teresa Industrial Base down into the valley to connect to Loop 375 in El Paso. We're going to have so much infrastructure, but our main goal this session is our wastewater system.
Water is so crucial in our region, and especially in the area where you all are at. There's been a lot of concerns in Santa Teresa, Sunland Park, about water and how it's being treated and having the infrastructure to do so. So, I mean, can you share with us a little bit more about, how important it is to work with the county and local water utilities to ensure that, these issues are being solved?
We're hand in hand. I mean, I'm communicating with the Water Authority every day, every 2 days. It's a real symbiotic relationship. We lobby for them. They let us know if there's going to be a problem because a water line broke or what have you. So we work together very well. And one of the projects, talk about partners locally, is one of partners NMSU. For about 6 years, we've worked with NMSU on a study to determine the feasibility of a desalination plant. And just this summer, the final report was published. And we're all very excited because we're sitting on a sea of brackish water where we are. And that could be a source of water for generations to come. And NMSU has done just an incredible job researching every angle you could imagine, from the depth of the brackish water to the cost of a facility and what have you. So we're going to focus on that in the future, hand in hand with NMSU.
What are some of your other goals that you have for developing that area in Santa Teresa in the near future?
Well, daycare is one of the mundane things because we're recruiting the businesses. We're having a lot of housing being built. Housing's another issue because even though we're having housing built, it's not the most affordable housing. And interest rates where they are, an entry-level worker is going to struggle to qualify on a mortgage. We are getting some multifamily housing apartments, and we're going to get fourplexes, and that's going to help. School district, we're bursting at the seams because we have people moving in. So we're close to the Gadsden Independent School District. So all of these things to accommodate that growth are what we're focusing on right now.
Now, I want to get back to what we originally started to talk about, and we just have a very short time. But do you have concerns about these tariff threats leading to more trade wars with more countries?
Yeah, I mean, if you take the period of time before World War II, the U.S. became very isolated, and we were in a tariff war with all sorts of countries, particularly with Japan, and that started a war. I'm not saying that we're going to have, let's say, a land war or whatever, a war in the classic sense, but it could get quickly out of hand. We're already in a trade war with China, tariff war. Now there's a threat with our partners here in North America. These are countries that are allies, they're neighbors, so they're friends of ours. And that's not something I don't think we want to do as Americans.
Jerry Pacheco is president of the Border Industrial Association. Jerry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony.
Moving on, the Chili Pepper Institute at New Mexico State University is dedicated to research and education related to chili peppers. Visitors can visit the Institute's teaching garden and learn more about the history and research of chili. Our producer, Courtney Hill, has more on the Institute in this Living Here.
My name is April Boschman. I'm the program specialist at the Chili Pepper Institute here at New Mexico State University. I run the gift shop as well as all the public-facing entities of the Institute, which includes we providing tours, getting together tastings. We do events in the community, as we recently put on a chili camp for local high school students during their fall break so that they could learn about the multiple aspects of the chili industry. So we used to be located on the NMSU main campus in the Gerald Thomas Hall building on the second floor, room 265. We've been there for years. It was a great location for the Institute and for all the students to find us, but now we're on site at the Bobby and Garcia Research Center where we have our teaching garden. So here in the gift shop, we have quite a wide variety of products. We have lots of chili swag, we've got bags, shirts, kitchen accessories, towels, earrings. We have green chili and red chili products. We have hot sauces from as far away as New York, Ohio. We have lots of books and educational resources here. We have a couple of books that were written by Dr. Boslin, who's the co-founder of the Institute. Customers are my favorite part. We get them from all over the world, all different walks of life. A lot of them are either just interested in chili or they're certified chili heads where they're like, give me whatever's the hottest on your shelf. A lot of them are just, interested in the industry, or they come to this area specifically because of our chili industry here in New Mexico.
Here we are at the Chili Pepper Institute Teaching Garden. We currently have 140 different varieties of peppers growing from all over the world, but definitely with the New Mexico State University's contribution highlighted here. So this year's theme is what's on the menu. So we highlight the different culinary uses of peppers. Some of the signage on the peppers will have a QR code that's scannable, and it'll link you to recipes and cookbooks featuring that specified pepper. So this is the Bahut Jolokia. It's the ghost pepper. It's significant to the Chili Pepper Institute here at NMSU because we are the ones that worked on getting it tested as the first pepper over 1 million Scoville units back in 2006. So we actually got it into the Guinness Book of World Records. And as you notice, this does have a QR code on it that you can scan, and I believe it links to Dr. B's boot-kicking brownies. It's a ghost pepper brownie recipe in our Chili Pepper Institute cookbook. The Chili Pepper Institute is located at 113 West University Avenue in Las Cruces, New Mexico. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., or you can visit us online, cpi.nmsu.edu.
That's all for our program. Remember, you can keep updated with news anytime at krwg.org. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.